Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, a program that we've talked extensively about over the last couple of weeks and months. The top 10 players for this Texas A&M program fired up to get into this one. And we've talked about this. Mike Elko doing a phenomenal job in the transfer portal, not only filling in some depth through the portal, but also adding some guys that are going to be some of the best players on this Texas A&M roster heading into 2024. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to give a quick shout out to the Texas A&M fans. We've talked a lot about this program over the last couple of weeks and months, in the transfer portal, on the recruiting trail. You guys continue to just show a ton of love, a ton of support. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear some players that the fellas might be sleeping on heading into 2024. We always learn a ton from you guys as well. And Dill, without further ado, let's get into this one. Let's start with our number 10 player, Chase Bisontis, who I'll say, certainly took his lumps during the beginning of that 2023 season as a true freshman. Look, you see a lot of you rarely see true freshmen play along the line of scrimmage. When they do play, they certainly take their lumps, but you take a look at the back half of the season, the last 5 games, 0 sacks, 3 quarterback hurries. I thought he looked phenomenal at guard against Oklahoma State in the bowl game. Chase Bisontis coming in at 10 certainly could be a top 5 player on this team come the end of 2024. How are we feeling about that one?
I mean, and this is going to be one of those test cases. I think you'll get an early kind of sample on whether this program is going to be a little bit different under Mike Elko, whether guys are going to start to improve at a higher rate than they did under the Fisher era. I mean, he's going to be the guy because you saw the moments. The play strength is very much there for Chase Bisontis, has the size, the athleticism, all the tools you really want to see. And you're right. At times, he was playing a little bit slow. It felt like missing assignments, as were a bunch of guys on that Texas A&M offensive line. So it wasn't just him, and it was a little bit chaotic, it felt, as a unit. But again, a guy who certainly is good enough, and I will be kind of watching him to get a litmus test of what this program is going to be in terms of how they develop guys, because he's too good not to be a good player.
You talked about player development for Mike Elko. That is the number one reason we're fired up about Mike Elko coming to Texas A&M is, again, the talent was never the issue in College Station. The player development was the issue, but specifically the player development on that offensive line. I mean, Jimbo Fisher, Steve Adazio just were not getting it done with the development of these big bodies. You guys know I'm a massive fan of Coach Cushing coming in. Mike Elko did a phenomenal job developing the Duke lines of scrimmage. Chase Bisontis is going to be a good litmus test, not only for player development, but player development on the offensive line. Going to my number 9 player, and a lot of different ways you could go, but for the Texas A&M fans that have been listening to the boys for the last couple of months, you guys know we are massive Jaden Walker fans, and they'll start the last 5 games over 400 yards during those last 5 games. Really came on as kind of that go-to wide receiver for the Aggies that back half of the season. And then you look at the physical traits and say 6'4", 210 pounds, extremely smooth, great body control in terms of going up, attacking the football in the air. I think this is a really high ceiling player that with better quarterback play really is going to put it together in 2024.
I'm kind of interested to see what the Texas A&M fans think, because I think him and Moose Muhammad do very similar things in terms of how well they work out of the middle. I'm kind of with you, though. I think Jaden Walker just has a little bit more athletic traits that you kind of want to see. I think he can do a little bit more than he did last year. It felt like he was kind of relegated to being a bit of a slot receiver, running really good routes, which is nice to be able to do at that size. I'm kind of wondering if you can bring a little bit more out of him, use some of those athletic traits, start making a few more plays, because what he was doing, he was really, really good at it. I thought he was getting open consistently, running in the zones well consistently. He's played really good towards the end.
The flashes with Jaden Walker are just so freaking special. Going to number 8, a little bit of a reach here. Going to go to another second-year player. We've had 2 of them, Chase Bisontis, now Ruben Owens. Now, for the Texas A&M fans, if you wanted to argue for a guy like Amari Daniels or for a guy like Le'Veon Moss, I would not push back very much. I think this might be the best 3-headed running room that you see in the country. Why am I going with Ruben Owens? I think for a couple of different reasons. One, you saw the flashes as a true freshman, but I think more importantly, going into year 2, where did Ruben Owens, probably struggle the most? Was kind of dealing with contact, some of that contact balance, playing the college football game at a physical level. you normally see running backs take that jump going into year 2, year 3. And then the second reason, you talk about a running back that, in my opinion, just fits exactly what Colin Klein wants to do on offense in terms of getting the ball to the perimeter, getting your running backs in matchups with linebackers and safeties in space. I think Ruben Owens, is probably the best running back situated to run this Colin Klein offense. Also a threat out of the backfield, the 10.6, 800-meter dash speed. I think Ruben Owens is going to have a little coming out party in 2024.
Yeah, and honestly, when I'm looking at it, and it's hard to say he's maybe higher than 8 now, I do think if I had Final Cut on the list, I'd probably have him a little higher. I think he really has that acceleration you're looking for, especially in the Colin Klein system. You see, they want to hit big plays in the run game, create a crease, and be able to gash teams. I think the way he can accelerate through holes, if he improves that contact balance, as you kind of mentioned, he's going to be a big time running back.
He's a guy that I think is going to take a massive step. And I wanted to put him over like a higher than 8, but I think there's also some really good players in the top 5. But I also think it's like you want to see a little bit more from the true freshman year. I think you're going to see that. And I think you circle back to this list mid-October and say, yeah, Ruben Owens is one of the best players on this Texas A&M team. Going to number 7, and Dill, a guy that I think is just, flying under the radar for this Aggies program. The transfer from Bowling Green, Cashius Howell. Now, a little bit of a different flavor than guys like Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, and Nick Skirton. Those guys are heavy-handed edge rushers that you can kind of do a lot of different things with. You look at Cashius Howell, he is just an absolute Ferrari coming off the edge. You talk about some of the premier edge rushers in terms of, testing those offensive tackles on the outside shoulder with that get off and burst off the line of scrimmage. That's what you get from Cashius Howell. Now, I think the question mark is, can he take that jump from the group of 5 to the SEC level? Dill, you go back to the Minnesota film in the bowl game. They looked pretty good, damn good against the Minnesota offensive line that was pretty solid in the Big Ten. 27 quarterback hurries, a 23% pass rush win rate, all the traits in the world. Give me Cashius Howell coming in at number 7.
In a relatively refined pass rush. I mean, he really has good instincts for doing it. I thought he looked awesome in the spring game, really looked good. And I'm kind of with you. I think they needed that guy who can work a little bit more or be a little bit more of a clean winner, if you will, because the other guys are power rushers, really good at that. They're very disruptive in the pocket, but they weren't generating the sacks that I think Cashius Howell can do. I think he's going to be very valuable to this team. Again, adds a different element than some of your other guys. I'm really looking forward to see, because I think he just got buried a little bit at Bowling Green. Just they don't get attention, but he really can rush the passer.
You talk about a lot of people asking me questions about why I'm so high on Texas A&M. I think one, it has to do with Mike Elko. Like I'm a believer in Mike Elko getting the best out of this roster. Secondly, the front 7. But I don't know how many front 7s are better than what you see at Texas A&M heading into 2024. Dill, we're leaving guys like DJ Hicks off this list, another guy that, certainly could be a top 5 player on this team heading into 2024. Now, you take a look at number 6, and we're going to go to another front 7 defender, and that's Shamar Stewart. Another guy with all the traits in the world. We remember him coming out of high school. Now, you look on the box score and say, maybe a little bit underwhelming for his second year, right? 11 tackles, only two TFLs, and 1.5 sacks. But you turn on the film, you start looking a little bit more in depth. He was one of the better pure pass rushers on this team, second on the team with 19 quarterback hurries, a 14.7% pass rush win rate. Elite pass rusher. I think he can improve in terms of what he's doing against the run. Another guy that we're talking about, a lot of these guys potentially being top 5 players for this Texas A&M program. Shamar Stewart certainly could be that in 2024 as well.
I think he should be able to be a really good answer on, especially because I think I was watching the spring game and I'm looking at him in Skirton coming off the edge and just how explosive they are, how good they are coming from the backside. I mean, they're going to be an interesting kind of duo to watch. Like, how are you going to run on them? Just because those two really, for their sizes, get off the ball so fast and are so good at hunting backs down. Especially Shamar Stewart. And again, I don't think you've seen enough of it yet. I really like the way it looked in the spring game. Things just got to translate and click, but there is as much talent as anyone in this football team in Shamar Stewart.
100%. Going to numbers 5, Noah Thomas, wide receiver. And I might be overreacting to the spring game performance. You got to give the shout out to the Texas A&M fans. I mean, we talk so much about Jabari Barber and Moose Muhammad and Jaden Walker, and we didn't give enough love to Noah Thomas. What does he come out in the spring game and do? Just absolutely puts on a show. You talk about another guy with elite traits. That's Noah Thomas. 7 out of 9 in contested catch situations. Also doesn't get enough love in terms of what he can do after the catch. This is a big physical wide receiver. 10 missed tackles forced last year. You could kind of, pick your poison in terms of what wide receiver you think is going to be the dude. Noah Thomas, Jaden Walker, Moose Muhammad. A lot of talent in this Texas A&M wide receiver room. I think the story is who's going to step up and be that guy. Now, going to number 4, and Dill, let's dive in here. Connor Weigman. I think I've been very vocal. Like, Connor Weigman's my dark horse. You go back to the 4 games he played in 2023, he looked exceptional. He was going to have a phenomenal season despite a Jimbo Fisher offense that just, you guys know how I feel about Jimbo Fisher's offense, but I think more importantly, the offensive line just not being remotely good enough. I think if you get this Texas A&M offensive line improved, I think he has the wide receivers on the outside. I truly think, and this is kind of like, you have certain guys heading into a season that you kind of just put your stake in the ground and kind of claim as your guy. Connor Weigman's one of my guys. I think can be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, coming in on number 4 for me for this Texas A&M program.
I mean, I think you saw on full display his ability to process really, really quickly, because you said it, that offensive line was a sieve every game. I mean, that Miami game, I thought he looked awesome. Just the ball, again, they weren't blocking anyone. No. I think we all saw that, but again, the ball's getting out really, really quickly, accurately, throwing in the face of pressure. I mean, that game alone made me think if they just can put something around him, especially at that offensive line position, Connor Weigman can be a big time quarterback, because that game, just to have the presence in I don't know, like the gamesmanship, the gamer in him to play good in that football game when everything was going wrong, I'd say for A&M was very impressive.
I think another thing to note is if you can keep them kind of blocked up, like this is a quarterback that can attack the deeper third just about as anybody, as good as about anybody.
And he can run. He can run.
Yeah, he a phenomenal athlete. I don't know how much. I don't think you'll see him used like Will Howard, because I think Will Howard just wasn't a good enough passer, so you kind of had to incorporate him in the run game. I think he's too good of a quarterback to treat him like Will Howard. I'm not trying to shame Will Howard. I just think that's the truth.
But keep you honest, though.
Yeah, you keep it. You got to keep it honest. Now, you look at him pushing the ball down the field. He's got the wide receivers to do that, right? Whether it's Noah Thomas, whether it's Jaden Walker, whether it's Cyrus Allen coming from La Tech, averaging 18 yards per reception, 45% completion percentage, 20-plus yards down the field, an average depth of target of almost 10 yards. He can push it, attack the deeper third. If that offensive line can hold up, I think that's another massive asset for this Texas A&M offense. And going to number 3, and let's just be frank, one of the best linebackers in the country, Taurean York, as a true freshman, second in the team on tackles, only next to probably the best linebacker in the country last year in Edrin Cooper. 8.5 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 10.7% missed tackle rate for a true freshman linebacker. I can't remember the last time I saw a number that low for a true freshman linebacker. 33 run stops with an average depth of tackle of 2.2 yards down the field. He is one of the best processors at that linebacker position you see in the country, which is wild because we're talking about a true freshman. I'm fired up about Taurean York kind of growing into that second year, because I thought if there's anything that maybe limited Taurean York, it was just a little bit more of some physical maturation. He did not step on campus and was like kind of that elite athlete. I think if you can get him there, you're looking at one of the best linebackers in the country.
And he wasn't Shamar Stewart coming in. When you saw Shamar Stewart, I mean, this guy physically very much ready to go, but I think you're right. Just how quickly he processes, how quickly he gets to the line of scrimmage. You see that average depth of tackle, really, really good stat from him. And again, I think a lot of that just comes, it's not like from explosiveness. And as he continues to develop and get through those college strength programs, you expect him to, again, look more the part. But when you can process the way he does, when you can recognize plays as quickly as he can, you're going to be a really, really good linebacker, and he really was.
Going to number 2, and that'll be 5 of our top 7 players for Texas A&M being in the front 7. Going to go to Shamar Turner. And I think one thing that's really interesting about Shamar Turner was phenomenal last year, right? 33 tackles, 10 TFL, 6 sacks, led the team with 26 quarterback hurries. What I'm most interested with Shamar Turner, this is a big cat. Can you potentially move him to the inside so you can make some room for Nick Skirton and Shamar Stewart, and you start kind of playing around with what this Texas A&M pass rush unit could look like if you win on first and second down. You get a team in 3rd and 8. I mean, Shamar Turner on the inside, potentially Nick Skirton on the inside, and then you got Shamar Stewart and potentially Cashius Howell on the outside. I mean, those are 4 NFL guys rushing the passer. How many offensive lines can pick up those kind of blitz packages? Shamar Turner, just an absolute gamer, great in the run game, coming in at number 2.
Yeah, such a complete player. And I think you're right. His versatility was such a weapon, I thought, for Texas A&M last year, and how much he was able to, again, kind of create those negative plays that, again, like you were hoping Shamar Stewart would do a little bit more. If you want him to grow into that ability, Shamar Turner, I mean, he was demonstrating that constantly. All those TFLs and sacks, like those are big, big plays. He's doing it all the time.
Number 1, Nick Skirton. And there doesn't have to be much explanation. Like, you just look back at what he did in the Big Ten last year, led the Big Ten in sacks with 10 sacks, 15 tackles for a loss, 28 quarterback hurries, a 22% pass rush win rate, 25 run stops. This is a cat that does it all. And if you had any question mark about him going from the Big Ten to the SEC, you saw in the spring game that he's about as good as advertised. I think he might be the best pure edge rusher in all of college football, which is wild because you probably talk about Shamar Turner, potentially Shamar Stewart as being some of the best as well. I think he rounds out just one of the more ferocious front sevens that you see in college football.
No argument. Has all the athletic traits, has all the play fundamental ability, all those things you kind of look for, and he's a producer. So there are no holes in his game, just super dominant, super athletic.
So what we'll close it on is I'll give you one, if you want to throw in 2 honorable mentions, players that I left out that you just kind of want to at least speak on when we're talking about top 10 players for this team.
Give me 2. Gabriel Brownlaw-Dindy. I think the way he played in that Oklahoma State game has me full-on believer that he is going to be a very productive player for them this year. In Dalton Brooks, another one. I thought Dalton Brooks, I think he's going to be a really, really good player. The secondary position, and I kind of with you, it's a tough one to kind of evaluate for A&M just because you have so many transfers. But again, you keep a couple of really nice young guys led by Dalton Brooks. I think Javen Thomas might be a really, really good player too. So give me Dalton Brooks. I think he's going to play a lot this year. I think he's going to be really, really good. I'll take those 2.
Yeah, Dalton Brooks was, if he played just a little bit more, he'd probably be on this list because when he did play, it was just probably too small of a sample size to put him in this top 10. That kid's gamer. Like, I think they got a really good one in Dalton Brooks. If there was a guy that I wanted to include as, just kind of my guy, it's going to be Will Lee. I think he is absolutely dripping with talent, depending on how they use him. I think he can impact this Texas A&M secondary in so many different ways. I don't think we included a single player in the secondary, and I think it had a lot more to do with just not sure how it's going to shake out, as opposed to us not believing in that unit as a whole.
Also, how good the front 7 is. It's like you can't leave those guys in the front 7 off because they're.
Yeah, we had 7 guys in the front 7. Absolutely disgusting front 7 for Texas A&M. We'll close it out there again. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.